Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Yes indeed, let's go ahead and let's start a whole new series here. So based on your suggestions, this one however I actually picked just a random pick from a website that I utilize a lot of my resource on, in this case the UFOcasebook.com. Fantastic website. It showcases a whole bunch of items, a whole bunch of cases, of experiences, events that occurred throughout the past decades, if not centuries. So pretty interesting when it comes to the information there. And I picked this one because it actually has to do with yet another entry here in Texas. The last one I left in July was in Aurora, Texas. This one actually has to do with a UFO encounter, or a set of them, that occurred there in Lubbock, Texas. So very interesting when I saw that yet again there was another entry possible here in Texas. And it has to do with this. You're looking at it now. It's known as, or became known colloquially as, the Lubbock Lights. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info tied to this local event there, specifically in Lubbock, Texas. So what were these Lubbock Lights? Well, they were a series of lights that were found or looked, and in some cases captured on photographs throughout August all the way, depending on debate, up until November of 1951. For those of you that don't know where Lubbock is just a small town located in Texas. One of those towns that's just pretty much growing, but not as quite as, as quick a pace as anything else like Austin or Dallas or San Antonio. But it just gave it a couple of, more decades, and it'll definitely have a boom or an experience, just like most other parts here in Texas. But this particular town on that fateful night in 1951 encountered, at that point, a starting stream of, in this case, flights by these unknown lights that to this day still remain heavily debated between the locals and between others there in the UFO world as to their actual origin. So it all started back in August 25th, in this case of 1951. There on that night, that's when people saw, and you're looking at the pictures of them here, what were considered a number of lights noiselessly stream across the sky. And they did so with a very peculiar pattern, in this case in the shape of a crescent, or in some cases in the shape of a forward-pointing triangle. In this case, though, there was a professor, a guy by the name of Dr. W.I. Robinson, who was there in the backyard of his home with two colleagues, him and two other professors, both of them also, it seems like, from the same school, were actually there just, I guess, spending the evening, and then that's when they saw this thing. And now, to be clear, this night did not have anything else that stood out of the ordinary. It was perfectly clear. There were no clouds in the sky. It was just a dark illumination, nothing else that would pinpoint to these lights as to their origin. Instead, to the perplexion of these guys, they saw these things, whatever it was, suddenly appear from one point of the sky, go across to the other one. They counted, and it gave the impression of about maybe 30 of these things, all in one single formation, flash through one point to another. They even timed it whenever they saw this. No doubt being, in this case, professors, one of them of the technological college and another one of chemical engineering. They were timing this thing, and they realized that every second there was a 30-degree of arc that these lights were moving through. So I guess that would be pretty quick, considering, I guess, the distance that they were judging these lights to be from them. So they saw this thing, and it was not, if it was just as is, they probably would have left it alone. However, they noticed in some cases, especially Professor Ducker, about 12 more flights of these things happening between August and November, as I was mentioning earlier. And so others as well that were on that in that area there in Lubbock, Texas, which, by the way, if you want to know exactly where it's located at, it's a little bit farther north of Texas. Like if you get to Dallas, go a little bit more northwest, and you'll be getting to the Lubbock, Texas area. But yes, people in that location, from the young to the old, from the scientific like these professors to the non-scientific, all of them were seeing these flights. Some of them witnessed as little as 3 flights. In this case, others were witnessing multiple flights, sometimes within the same night itself, and yet others were stating that they were witnessing all the way up until, like I mentioned earlier, to November, while others simply just saw it that one single time. There was one person, though, of notable instance where he saw this and attempted to actually capture evidence. He was 18 years old at the time, and it was by a boy by the name of Hart Jr. It was on August 30th, about 5 days after the initial flight of these lights first started, that he himself had a Kodak 35mm camera, and he was there, I guess, waiting, trying to see, because it seems like probably at this point these lights were all coming across at a specific time period, but there he was waiting to see whenever they would come about, and sure enough they did. So he was able to take a lot of pictures, and of those pictures capture 5 of them within his camera. In fact, you were looking at pictures of these items themselves. So with these pics, he was able to then showcase to others how they look like. People were able to examine them. Some of them, in fact, thought to themselves that these things had a larger luminosity than others. Others just simply stated that they were dim at most, not really bright in terms of the actual lights themselves. But still, people were able to just look at these pictures and then see how cool, like essentially how unique they looked as well. And then also, people that were even closer to these lights stated that they heard the sound that these lights made, these Lubbock lights. According to them, there was a witness, specifically a guy by the name of Roger Dodds. He stated that he heard a slight rustling or some kind of whooshing sound as these things passed by his area. Obviously nothing like, let's say, the sound that an airplane would make, which is of course loud and almost impossible to not mistake for an airplane. No, in this case it was just quiet, slight rustling, quiet whooshing sound as these things came across his area. But that was a good point to bring up about, because others had not heard anything resembling this stuff, and then here we have a witness that was able to actually hear it. So all this attention, of course, eventually brought forth the Air Force. This was still during the time when they were in their Project Blue Book, and there was a captain by the name of Edward Rappelt who decided to go there to Lubbock to try to investigate, see if he could find something for an answer. Like in this case, with something like Project Blue Book, it does seem like the obvious recourse is to try to find the most natural explanation. So you could think that maybe there's already a slight bias when it comes to finding an answer. But this guy, this captain, he was interviewing a bunch of people. Eventually, though, he did come across, there was an elderly rancher, someone else, who also stated that he heard the sound of these lights coming across his area. And the way he described it, this was his quote: "It's an unmistakable call of the plover," which is a water bird that has a very somewhat large wingspan, about 1 foot or so. And when that happens, they create that slight whooshing sound, and they are known to fly in that pattern. And he surmised that because of the nearby city lights there in Lubbock, Texas, they were simply reflecting off of, in this case, the white bottom part of this plover, because they had an oily white set of feathers right across their chest, which of course would be towards the bottom as they're flying. So there they are flying, reflecting these city lights, making it seem like something else altogether. But others eventually pointed out that these plovers do not have anything larger than groups of 3. I did not know that. Who knew that certain birds will have just a certain number within their group, and then that's it? So these things, the ones that were being recorded on the photographs, they had much more, in this case 20 to 30 lights within them. So unless this is a unique set of plovers that are going by the wayside and going with a much larger group than usual, then those could be explained away. And then there was another person that was interviewed by this captain. He stated that he thinks it was actually ducks because in his experience he saw at one point that there was a drive-in theater nearby. Them ducks were actually flying, same formation, but in this case their bottom parts of their body, the same chest area, was illuminated by the drive-through lights. So when that happened, it made it look exactly like these Lubbock Lights, and so that was his argument. I don't know what the official ending of Project Blue Book was on these Lubbock Lights, but considering that this is what was being reported, it does seem like that's more likely what they went by. Like it was more of a natural occurrence rather than, let's say, something more UFO or alien related. But otherwise, after that, after the time period of about August to November, that was it. There were no other lights reported thereafter in the Lubbock area. Nothing else more recent, in fact, unless there might have been a few one-offs. Nothing unlike the kind that was experiencing up to about 30 different flights throughout those months. So nothing like that would stand out as another set of patterned flights. But that's it. That's pretty much all the info associated with these Lubbock Lights. For a brief period, they caught on a sort of phenomenon there in that location, and they were able to capture, I guess, a lot of people's interest, including the Air Force, with their Project Blue Book. But ever since that time, it's just been quiet as is. If anybody has any more info, maybe something I might have missed, please post those comments below. It's crazy to think that in that time, there in the 50s, that you had picked that cameras that could take such, I guess, pretty good in that sense, night capturing images like that. Try doing that today with any cameras and you'll be lucky to get something as clear like this. But it's good that at least that we have that evidence as the closest bit of evidence of these lights. What do you guys think? Is it a natural phenomenon? A set of ducks, a set of plovers, in this case, running through the night sky, or I'm sorry, flying through the night sky, or was it something otherworldly? I'm like 50-50 on that one, because it would make sense that something like this, if you had a group of animals essentially flying through the night, that they would be very quiet, and they do form in a very visible formation every time you see them in the night sky. But at the same time, it doesn't rule out anything else in terms of it being something more otherworldly, a UFO or alien related. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care.